The House of Representatives passed a resolution. Unfortunately, this is actually good, overturning President Biden's student loan debt cancellation that he wrote by executive order, and that would cost taxpayers something like, I don't know, $275 billion, or add that to the federal debt that we don't need. I mean, this is just, it's irresponsible and stupid is what it is, bailing out college. You're not bailing out the students. I mean, you are in the short term, but you're bailing out universities that are flush with cash. I don't understand it. And they broke the numbers down recently. Here's a big question for you. How much money do you think this would cost you personally per taxpayer in Ohio? Joining me on the show this morning, Demian Brady. He's Vice President of Research with the National Taxpayers Union Foundation. Demian, good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. All right, numbers guy. So we have about roughly 150 million people in the country, and I'm going to include D.C. in there too, who are 25 years older without a bachelor's degree or higher. And I don't know if that includes people who started and failed or didn't finish or whatever it might be, but bottom line it for me here, out of those people there, how much money would it cost people in Ohio, each Ohio taxpayer? I know you broke it down in those numbers. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So actually, there is two components to Biden's debt cancellation. He also has another executive action for a income-derived repayment plan. So the total cost of both of these together is actually over $570 billion. So when you break that down, that amounts to over $3,500 per taxpayer. And the White House had put out some information showing the number of beneficiaries in every state. So, for example, there would be over 1 million people in Ohio who would get their loans canceled. But there are about 5 times as many people in Ohio who didn't go to college, didn't get a college degree, or so it's not fair to them. So that the cost for all the loans forgiven for those people in Ohio amounts to about $4,000 per taxpayer in Ohio. $4,009.28 per taxpayer in Ohio to bail out students, basically. But this is just bailing them out in the short term because the next class comes in and we got to do it again. Yeah, I mean, it's a simple matter of fairness here. Well, before that point, it's also not really. They call it a debt forgiveness or a debt cancellation, but what it actually is a debt transfer from these borrowers onto the backs of taxpayers.
Yep.
And it's not fair to the people who self-financed their education, not fair to the people who pursued other career paths. And it also creates some perverse incentives. It may inspire future borrowers to make riskier decisions because they're going to count on another federal bailout down the line, and also apply it to universities and colleges. They might raise their fees and tuition rates higher than they would have otherwise because they know that the federal government is going to come in and bail them out.
Right. Why should a person of the same age who didn't go to school, didn't go to college, didn't get that degree, why should he or she have to pay for someone who did?
That's the question you have to ask President Biden and the people who have supported this. Yeah, ultimately, it boils down to a question of fairness, and there's lots of problems with this. And also the way it was implemented, they're trying to circumvent Congress, which has the power of the purse from the Constitution, which is why that the Supreme Court is reviewing this executive decision, and a decision is expected by the end of the month.
I know guys, because I'm involved in the trades and building and stuff like that. I know guys that are successful people. They work, got out of high school, started working construction, got involved in it. They branch off. They do their own thing, right? Hang their own shingle. They're buying heavy equipment. They're buying, diesel trucks and generators and all this stuff. And they got all this things they invest. They don't get a dime back for that. And those create jobs. Those are well-paying jobs. Those are good jobs. And the contractors and construction people that buy this stuff don't get a break on that. And yet we want to give someone who's got a degree in, I don't know, gender studies, for example. Somehow we should be paying full freight for you to tell us we're all evil and bad people.
Yeah, I mean, you have illustrated one of the many problems with this proposal, how just completely unfair it is. And, as I noted, the White House had put out state by state and congressional district data on how many people are going to get their loans canceled. So that's why we went through and looked at the number of taxpayers in each state and the number of adults who don't have a bachelor's or higher degree. So that way we can balance that out. So there's a lot more people who aren't going to benefit from this. And the burden is just going to get taxed onto taxpayers when we already have a massive debt and deficit.
And as we've learned, too, this is, and no one is asking Biden or the administration, this is so basic, is, well, why is college tuition cost so out of control you've got to forgive debt? It's because you guys keep giving college students free money in order to go to college, which just artificially inflates the cost, and it drives up demand. And not only that, it's at some point, what happens is the music stops and you got to repay this overly inflated college degree. You could never hope to get your money back in. And we just rinse and repeat the cycle. They call, college is too expensive. We better give you more subsidy. And subsidies does nothing but inflate the actual cost of a good or service. And it just continues to happen. It's the greatest scam ever perpetuated on Gen Xers and millennials and even Gen Zers. But I think Gen Zers are starting to wake up.
And also on the future generations of taxpayers who are going to get stuck with the bill for all our deficit spending and unwinds now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, government guarantees the loans. Colleges raise their prices because of that. It means you need to take out more loan money, which leads to an increase in guaranteed lending, which increases more cost, rinse and repeat, and here we go.
That's a vicious circle, isn't it?
It really is something, and it's criminal is what it is because, I feel like, I'm not all too, because I think some younger people get it, but they look at me like I'm the enemy because I don't want to if I were them, I'd want someone to give me a check for $50K or wipe my debts out or delay them or what. I get that whole thing, and we told these young people, us adults, us moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles, got to go to college to make something of yourself. We did this to this generation, so they're mad at us, rightfully so. I get that. It worked for us. It's not working for them. But this model needs to be blown up.
Yeah, and another issue here is that the Department of Education had said that all the loans issued over the past 25 years were actually going to generate revenues for taxpayers. It was the interest that was going to be paid back on these loans. It was actually going to decrease the deficit. But the government accountability took a look at that and said, no, that's not true. It actually has turned out to be a $200 billion cost to taxpayers, and this loan transfer of the Biden's plan is only going to worsen that cost. The government just uses a lot of poor assumptions when it analyzing the ultimate cost to taxpayers for all of its loan and credit programs, not just student loans, but the government engages in lots of other credit activities as well.
Just winds up costing us more money in the long run. If you just priced it for what it costs, and we'd be back to where people can afford to work and go to school and raise a family. I mean, you think about people who are, baby boomers, older baby boomers who did this. Yeah, you could go to college, have a job, have a car, go on vacation, buy a house, have a family, and still pay for college. You can't do that. Matter of fact, because college is so expensive, you can't have the family in the car or the vacation anymore.
Yeah, and then there's all kinds of regulations and taxes that just pile onto that and other issues, make it harder for people to get ahead, harder for businesses to make the decisions that they need to make to expand and hire people. Right. Too much red tape.
All right. On the show this morning is the National Taxpayers Union Federation President, Vice President of Research, Demian Brady, talking about Biden's ill-conceived college loan bailout. We're still pushing this nonsense despite common sense telling you it's not only not going to work, it's going to cost more money that it's allegedly going to save. He also kind of backtracked a little and said, yeah, we got this repayment scheme. How would that work if you would get loan forgiveness? Is it one of those deals where you work for the government for 10 years and they waive everything? What's he talking about there?
Well, there are some laws that have been in place for a long time that provide student loan forgiveness for people who go into public service, work for nonprofits and things like that. That's been in place for years. But the Biden administration is proposing a new income-derived repayment plan where it'll refactor the rates that are charged to students based on how much they earn. And I think we'll have a pretty significant price tag, doubling the cost of the loan cancellation aspect of his plan.
Yeah. I'd like to think that colleges in our university system is pretty good because it seems like we got a hell of a lot of people coming from around the world to study here and get their degrees. But that's a different model. We're talking about wealthy people from wealthy countries. We're not talking about, mom and dad who've been saving in their kids' 529 plan since they were born and scrimping and saving in order to get their kid to go to school. And then they get to the cost thing and go, wow, this is it's absolutely ridiculous. It's different. So it's not like, universities are not in demand, and we need people in STEM, in those kind of fields, in the STEMs. But at the same time, the cost is just so ridiculous at this point. The idea and notion we've gotten to is just waiving student debt because it's so cumbersome for one class of people, and yet ignoring everyone else is not only problematic, it's completely backwards, and one could make it a racist or sexist or classist kind of argument as well, because typically the people who go to college are people who are fairly well off to begin with, right? Aren't we just subsidizing rich people?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the people who are going to school are becoming lawyers, scientists, so they're going to earn a pretty good living. So it's not fair that other taxpayers are subsidizing this loan forgiveness for these people who have the capability to go out and earn a decent paycheck.
I think the other scary thing, and about this, is the largest growing sector in the college loan scam. Now, something like 1 in 5 borrowers are 50 years or older, the fastest growing demographic amongst college debtors. So, look at people in their 50s and 60s who are borrowing money. I guess they're doing that for their kids or grandkids versus going to school themselves.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that would make sense. You don't usually see people that age going into university classes. So I would imagine that they're doing that on behalf of their children or their grandchildren, perhaps as well.
Well, right. I don't know how but now you're taking out a loan later in life that's going to cost you probably most of your retirement. That doesn't make a lot of sense. The brainwashing with college in this country is really the problem. And
just yesterday, there was some activity in the Senate. So on the one side, Bernie Sanders introduced his College for All plan, which will provide for the federal government to pay for all the tuition and fees of public universities for a lot of students. And that would cost at least $50 billion per year, and probably much more than that. And it would be financed by imposing a tax on stock transactions. So that means you're pinging people who are investing and preparing for their retirement. And on the other side, a group of Republican senators put out a plan to try to increase transparency of university costs and college costs, improve the programs to make sure that students are aware of all their obligations upon taking a loan and how it's going to work. And then also to simplify some of these repayment programs and prevent the administration from using regulation to modify those.
Yeah. Demian Brady, Vice President of Research, National Taxpayers Union Foundation on the Scott Sloan Show. House of Representatives passing a resolution just a few days ago overriding President Biden's executive action to cancel student debt, but that argument is never going to go away. Biden says he's going to fight for this, which is one of the dumber and more irresponsible things that Biden has done, and that's saying a lot. But and here's the thing, typically if you're in your 20s and 30s, you're hearing this, or maybe you're hearing about it, going, "Oh my God." If I were that age, I'd want someone to come and alleviate my student debt. It's not like I don't have empathy for people in their 20s and 30s. People our age told them to go to college, take some money out and get a degree, and they do, and they can't buy cars, they can't buy houses, they're delaying having kids and families, and that's quite honestly the people who are going to be funding our retirement, because that's how Social Security works. So we've really screwed this generation over, and I don't take responsibility, because I've been saying for a long time on this show about the importance of not getting a college degree and treating people who don't have a college degree equally with those that do. But it's the whole, you can't put a bumper sticker on your car that says my son or daughter is a proud electrician or a welder or a plumber. But you'd gladly put one on that said my kid's a student at Harvard or Yale or UC or Xavier.
Yeah, there has been a growing movement of people looking for other options, so they're not going to college and incurring these huge, massive loans that are difficult to pay back. When there are other options, good paying options that more and more people are considering nowadays. But our policymakers need to get together and find ways to, and also with the colleges to find ways to reduce these costs, because they've really risen a lot faster than inflation, it seems, over the last couple decades.
And I think ultimately too, Damian, is that, and this is outside your scope because you're the numbers guy, but and how we think what college should do, because I think there's still a good number of people that think college is about turning you into this well-rounded, studious, learned individual who's a pillar of the community and philosophical and wise because they spend a lot of time in academia. And then the rest of the country thinks, no, you're there so you can get a degree and get a really good job. That's why mom and dad pay the money, or you pay the money, get the loans, in order to facilitate a quality of life, perceived quality of life that you're looking for, which is one of comfort and means, which is a good thing in America, right? But I think they're kind of like at a crossroads. It's weird how many people still think this is about becoming a well-rounded individual. Great, but it's going to cost you, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that, and then you expect me to pay for it. Listen, there's a difference between a career and a hobby. Pick that. Go with the career. Do the hobby stuff on your own time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and nowadays, to that point, I mean, there's no better time to use means to self-educate yourself. If you want to become a more well-rounded person, there's all incredible resources available on the internet and YouTube. So you can, go to college, focus on the fundamentals that will help you in your career. I mean, there's all kinds of other ways you can learn too, especially if you want to learn a foreign language. This is probably the best time in history because there's so many resources available.
So easy to do. Before you used to have to go to university to do that. Demian Brady, Vice President of Research, National Taxpayers Union Foundation. What's next for this thing? It seems like this issue's never, as long as Biden's in office, this is never going away. It's just going to continue to come back.
Well, the Supreme Court is expected to hand down a decision this June on the constitutionality of Biden's executive action, because this was taken to circumvent Congress and the power of the purse and our elected representatives. So we'll see what they come out with, and then there's going to be a lot of debate in Congress laying out the options between, for example, Bernie Sanders' College for All plan, and then other plans to try to deregulate and increase transparency over the student loan programs and over universities.
Yeah, this is going to keep going, isn't it? Damian, all the best. Thanks for joining the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, sir.
You got it. Coming up next on the Scott Sloan Show, I'll keep it education related here too, because here's a great example of that $4,000 you would be paying in student related.